Hi listeners, I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa, and together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme.
We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Hi listeners, I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa, and together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme.
We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
Hey guys, it's Matt, and we've got a fun little bonus episode here for you. This was recorded at the Creature Feature weekend in April, and it is Kyle with Jordan Miller from Camp Nightmare interviewing Tommy Lee Wallace. And they just released this over on the Camp Nightmare feed, so we were going to release it on our feed as well. And I just want to really quickly throw out there, hey, go and check out Camp Nightmare. It's a great podcast. They're great dudes, and you might be hearing Jordan's voice again in a couple of weeks on another bonus episode. Maybe, who knows, #shrug. But in the meantime, enjoy this interview that Kyle did with Jordan interviewing the great and talented Tommy Lee Wallace.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Happy 420. Happy Record Store Day. Most importantly, happy Creature Feature Saturday.
And happy Halloween.
And happy Halloween. How many more days left? Did anybody do the math?
Someone out there did the math.
We could all sing together. My name's Kyle Kukta. I'm a co-host on Horror Movie Night Podcast.
And I'm Jordan Miller. I'm a co-host on Camp Nightmare Podcast.
And we have the distinct pleasure. We're also both filmmakers, so this is an especially distinct pleasure for us to be chatting with someone who has done so many things that have inspired us. We got to chat with him a little bit earlier. Very, very cool, and I'm excited for you guys to also be here and chat. We'll open this Q&A up a little bit later in the panel, so you'll have questions and stuff that you can talk about. But I'd like to welcome to the stage, full with popcorn. Oh, no, he doesn't have his popcorn in hand anymore. But Mr. Tommy Lee Wallace is going to join us up here, so let's go ahead and give him a round of applause. Yes, love that. This is a great way to start the panels.
Yeah.
This is going to be awesome.
So we all remember Tommy Lee Wallace. Who all is familiar with a little movie called Halloween 3? You heard of that one?
Yep.
Little known fact, that's actually the sequel to Halloween 2.
Oh,
yeah.
Is that right?
I know.
Direct
a little
sequel.
known fact about that film.
There he is. Thanks again.
So we're going to start this off just sort of conversational. We're going to ask some questions of our own. We're going to have a little talk here while you guys out there start preparing your questions. We've got a microphone right in the middle. When we open it up to that, you guys can form a line or fight each other for the microphone, and we can ask some questions.
Yeah, Jordan and I did take some bets, so a fight would be awesome.
Yeah.
If we could do that.
We've bet on individuals who we think from you guys would win in fights.
But awesome! Thank you again for joining us up here. I think we mentioned Halloween 3. It's on your hat. It's very much sort of and over the past decade, if not probably a little bit more, there's been this resurgence of love. That certainly you're rocking the hat. Your table is full of Halloween 3 stuff. What does that feel like to have this sort of love and resurgence for something that was so close to you?
Redemption is sweet. Halloween 3 was not especially well received in the beginning, which those of you who know my book about Halloween 3, subtitle is Where the Hell's Michael Myers? And that was kind of the reaction in the beginning because we were very naive. We didn't advertise it effectively. Universal didn't think of that. John didn't think of that. Deborah didn't think of that. Advertising department didn't think of that. I didn't think of that, but it was like this needed special treatment. It needed a big ad that said, hey, we're doing something different this time. And all it had was in the corner this little teeny ribbon that said, all new. Like, what the fuck does that mean? And so it had a rocky start, but man, it's been really sweet the last 10 or 15 years to see it just, grow and grow in popularity. And if you tune into some of these merch places like Trick or Treat Studios, it's insane what they've got in the way of merch. Wrapping paper, Halloween 3 wrapping paper.
Yeah, for your Halloween gifts, clearly.
Yeah, no, my kid's gonna think Santa's a weirdo. Yeah.
So was there a moment that you could pinpoint where you realized that this resurgence was happening and that there was a different opinion forming about this film?
Well, in my book, I talk about Sean Clark. Some of you may know Sean. He came one time, and this was years ago, it's at least 20 years ago. He came to my house, and interviewed me for various things. He was really the first one who suggested to me that there was a whole slew of people out there who really loved my movie. Because by that point, I had come to accept that it was kind of like the black sheep of the Halloween family, and it was, honestly, I felt like I'd somehow failed. And he said, no, you got it all wrong. There are people out there who really love this movie. And I said, okay. And he said, come to one of these cons, you'll see. And I said, I don't think that's for me, it's like goth bikers and shit, I don't think I want to do that. He said, no, you don't understand. They're going to put you up in a nice hotel and sit you down at a table, and people are going to come up and tell you what a genius you are, and they're going to give you money. It's like, what? Really?
Sign me up.
Well, okay, I'll try one of those. And it was fun. And virtually every person who came up to my table was just like sweet and supportive and enthusiastic. And it was like, wow, shot in the arm,
So how long ago was that?
At least 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just been so gratifying. I think part of the reason is, A, it was always a good movie. I don't mind saying that. And B, it's about Halloween. As much as I love and am proud of the original Halloween, it's not much about Halloween. It's about babysitters getting murdered.
Right.
Yes.
And in fact, that was the original title, The Babysitter Murders. It was Irwin Yablans who thought up, hey, let's call it Halloween, which was a stroke of genius.
No doubt. No, this truly
But
has
Halloween 3 is about Halloween.
Yeah.
Very much
Very
about
much.
Halloween. And that sort of starts getting built into some people's annual celebration. And have you noticed that Halloween has become like the most popular holiday of the year for a lot of people?
Oh, yeah.
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 How many people have Halloween 3 in their normal Halloween rotation? right? I mean,
Yeah, like
that's-
everybody.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
definitely in mine.
Yeah, fantastic.
Well, it's a demonic, crazy idea, and a lot of that credit goes to Nigel Neal, who was the original writer on the script. It's really a three-handed script. When Nigel turned it in, he is an Englishman, was an Englishman of, he was kind of looked upon as the person who revolutionized British television back in the 50s, which was really a considerable accomplishment. It was just, he had deep ideas and a crazy, weird, twisted sense of humor and good sci-fi bones, if you will. But when he turned it in, as interesting and strange an idea as it was, it also had the unfortunate quality of being like a 50s British sci-fi television show. If you look in my book, you'll see some of his pages, and you can right away get the sense that's like, wow, this is interesting, but it's a little bit disconnected from the first audience that we knew we were going to get, which was a USA young people's audience. And so we immediately knew we had to do some work on it. And John took on that task and rewrote Nigel. And I read John's version, liked it a lot. We had talked, you know, as you would. But then I went ahead and rewrote John, and John never put his name on it, and Nigel took his name off of it. So this ridiculous title of writer is partly accurate, but in the end, it's not.
Yeah.
Not anywhere near. Turn that fucking thing off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So take us to a theoretical world where Halloween 3 had hit the way it was meant to in the theaters. Where do you think we would have Michael Myers in the way we would today, or do you think the Halloween series would have gone?
I think both things would have happened. That the excitement about the Michael Myers franchise would have continued and movies would have gotten made. Listen, you know, that much demand, Hollywood, it's about money, and that was a moneymaker. However, had Halloween 3 been a big success, we would have spun out other stories on the season forever. To this day. It amazes me. It's such a great idea, a money-making idea, but nobody ever sort of picked it up and carried it beyond that. Although, independently of our group, there have been quite a few movies about Halloween since.
Yeah.
But it's just proof in action that, man, you could go on forever with great Halloween stories of the season. For old, ancient stories and modern stories.
Yeah. Well, we see. I mean, we don't get like the Trick or Treat anthology or anything of that season. I think without Halloween 3. I mean, we're setting up all these Halloween stories, these legends. It's a bottomless pit of amazing stories that you can pull out and bonkers stuff that you can do. I mean, there's Halloween 3 is wild. Now, we need to get the love for Fright Night Part 2 up here now at the same level of Halloween 3, because that is also sort of an unsung sequel, separate thing that I don't know if it necessarily is as misunderstood as Halloween 3, but it certainly doesn't get the love that it deserves.
Well, Fright Night Part 2, as decent a movie as it is and as pretty a movie as it is to look at in widescreen, it was star-crossed because I think about 3 days before its scheduled release, its distributor was the victim of a shotgun murder. Have you ever heard of the Menendez boys?
Oh, wow.
Their dad and mom were murdered by them, and they murdered the movie.
That was 3 days before the release?
And it just scuttled everything.
I didn't know that.
So it never got quite a real proper release. And it's also kind of an odd history. It's all tangled up in litigation and different people claiming ownership. But it's not really been seen. A VHS copy is kind of raggedy and not very pretty. But the good news is apparently a company in England is going to release Fright Night Part 2 and the original Fright Night as a package in, I think, the fall, sometime later in the year, or maybe it's Christmas, in, what's it called, 4D?
4K?
4K.
They're going to get a good transfer of it and everything, too?
That's nice.
That's fantastic. Because you're right, we've only seen it as this VHS, and it just gets,
I hope it gets its full treatment, because Mark Irwin did a splendid job as art director. Dean Cheddar, Mark is DP. Dean Cheddar was art director. And it's a beautiful movie, really good-looking movie. Yeah. And I think it's a nice companion piece to the original.
Absolutely. You don't want to have something that is just sort of this tacked-on, replica. So, and Fright Night Part 2 doesn't feel like that. So,
I thought we had great fortune in casting with the foursome, the bad guy foursome, and of course, Roddy and William Ragsdale and Tracy Lynn were a nice trio to follow around for the protagonists. So it was fun, and I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful movie. To pivot to one of my absolute favorite things, we would love to talk about your legacy with It and the Stephen King two-parter. Can you take us through, because that has lived on well above the means of most what people call made-for-TV films. In effect, a lot of people, I think, today have to be reminded that was a made-for-TV event.
2-night miniseries, they called it.
Just talk to us about, I guess, developing that for was there ever talks of doing movie or instead of TV show?
It was, before I came on board, it was, I think at one point, the budget was bigger, and I think it was going to be 3, maybe 4 parts.
Wow.
Really, it is 1,000 pages long, the novel. And so it was worthy of a longer treatment. It was would have been perfect for like a 5-night miniseries.
I've always thought that, even with the new modern versions and your version, there's still so many large portions of that book that are left untouched.
Unbelievable. But I think a lot of money in the budget got whittled down as it was being passed from one entity to another, and some producers over here, they grabbed off their share, and then they decided not to do it or something. I think Larry Cohen was well compensated, and of course Stephen King had a big share, I'm sure. But by the time I got it, it was whittled down to, here's how much we can afford. 2 nights, take it or leave it. I'll give it a try. But mainly because the script, at least the first night, was brilliant. Larry Cohen had written, it's the only time I know about, those of you out there who watch a lot of TV, commercial TV, you're well familiar with this idiotic commercial break habit people have of you're really absorbed in the story, but because every hour is really 43 minutes and the rest of it is commercials, because they got to sell shoes and cars and beer and all the rest.
Doesn't help your budget any, unfortunately.
Doesn't help the audience's concentration either. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And but those were the terms, and Larry had done the really fine. Over 2 hours, you had 7 chunks of. They called them acts. That's laughable if you know anything about literature and play structure. It's idiotic. It's just breaks to sell shit.
They should start doing that in live theater, just insert in the middle of every 30 minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's freeze the actors in the middle of their line because they got to sell Kotex or something. Anyway, the first night, Larry had very cleverly, because he had the opportunity to do 7 acts, remember how many characters there are, main characters.
7.
So he structured it so that each act is about one of the characters. And man, that's just really, really the first use I know of, and maybe the only use where it actually had dramatic validity. 7 pieces. That's one reason I think it is successful. Second night, something happened between Larry and Steve King, because I read it and I went, what? They jettisoned everything. So it was a really ordinary TV movie ending that ended in like a lodge, and some guy gets murdered and falls down on a moose head or some bullshit that wasn't in the book at all. And I said, wait a minute.
They're like, Stephen King's from Maine, put him on a moose head. It's fine, yeah.
It's like, this is not up to the standard of night one. So I rewrote Larry, and I feel like I did okay. It may not be as powerful as night one, but it got the story told. And overall, going into that project, it was shot in Vancouver, and that was my first time up there, and that was a dream scene because the crews were so good, and the I don't know, it's a lovely city, Vancouver. I knew I was in heaven the first time I was in my office, sitting there, kind of doing what you do when you first move in someplace, and kind of putting stuff here, and this lovely, like 19-year-old farm-fed young lady comes in, with a smile on her face, and says, "Cappuccino truck is here." And I went, what? Okay, I'll be right out. No, the support, the producers were excellent, really supportive and smart, and that's part of the formula for success, is to have producers. In television, it's hard to find, but when you do a feature, let's start back here. When you do a play, the writer tends to be the king, the playwright. When you do a feature film, the director tends to be the king. When you do most television, the producer winds up kind of being the king, and the director's just like a hired guy to direct traffic or something. Not a good fit for most directors. John, for example, and me with John learning the craft by assisting and supporting him a lot, I just got used to the idea that the director's king. When it's time to shoot the movie, the director makes the big final decisions. Smart director will get a lot of input and listen carefully and take good ideas from everywhere, but when it's time to shoot, the director gets to say. But on television, typically that's not quite the case, and it leads to some conflicts, or at least it did for me. But on this movie, everybody was pulling in the same direction. The producers were fantastic, and producers with an S, because if you ever notice credits on movies, let's see, on this movie there were 3, 4, 5, 6. The list of producers just goes on and on, depending on, okay, who brought the money, who actually knows what they're doing, who's there as a token because their brother-in-law threw in some money, who's there because they made the phone call that got the star. The list can be vast, and only a couple of those producers actually know what they're doing, generally. But on it was a dream. The actors were fantastic. I was intimidated before we started because we were casting TV stars, plus Tim Curry, and I thought, oh man, they're gonna eat me for lunch. I'm just a nobody, and here we go. Turned out they were just pros. They were supportive. They all knew their lines. There was no star bullshit or anything. And it was the kids who were kind of a handful. They were arguing over the size of their trailers, and of course they were kids after all. So on set, when you got 7 or 8 or 10, depending on how many kids are in this scene, their exuberance is just like, oh, it was like herding cats a lot of the time. But all that really matters in the end is that they gave great performances, and part of my job was just to deal with all that other stuff and make sure they have a space where they can do their magic. And I thought the kids were excellent. In a way, I think our secret weapon was not only the fact that the story isn't so much about just flat horror as it is about rites of passage of children.
Yeah.
And man, that touches everybody deeply. So we went so far as to have kid and adult camp. We flew all of the, I can't remember which way it worked. There are almost no scenes where the kids and the adults appear together, so we could shoot separately pretty much. But we went to the trouble of putting all of them together, kids and adults, so that the kids and the adults could work out their mannerisms and their, Bill Denbrough and his hand on his face. That kind of stuff was not accidental. It was very deliberate. They worked with each other until they had that stuff down. And I think that was our secret weapon. I believed that those kids grew up to be those adults, and that's not always the case.
Yeah.
It was a happy set, and a good time was had by all.
That's very apparent because there's been quite a few King miniseries specifically that don't have the longevity that it does, and that everything that you had done, even with there being a reimagining and a new thing, it's a monumental task that has lived on into now. I mean, we see that Tim Curry's Pennywise everywhere just as much as we see our new one too,
It's become a thing where there's so many young kids who I know Pennywise and know that Tim Curry image, and I've never seen the thing at all. It's lived beyond its means in that way.
Well, that story has a very tender spot in the heart of it, and I think a lot of people, writers, directors, filmmakers in general, forget that element. Character is a lot of the game. And if what you come in with is, oh man, I love to kill people and have blood spurting and blah, 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 it's like, I'm bored already. Tell me a story and make the story about human beings. And then I'll watch whatever it is you put me through. But at the very heart of it, it better be that.
Yeah.
And I think it's its secret weapon.
And I always thought Richard Bellis' score was so beautiful with what he did with that film too.
Yeah, I only gave Richard one note at the beginning, and I just said, Bernard Herrmann, were he alive, you wouldn't have the job. And he took that seriously and ran with it.
Yeah. Wow, and it's less dissonant than I would expect. Than I think Bernard Herrmann would probably come at it with much more dissonance.
Perhaps so. But I thought Richard knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I believe so too. And it's a huge effects film. There's a rotoscoping and stop motion animation and the giant practical spiders. Was that the biggest thing you had tackled when it comes to that arena?
Most ambitious thing I was part of. I sort of had an affection because we did not have the budget to really do that up. If there was one area that I would have wished for more time and more money, it would be special effects, as is the case with Steve King, because we corresponded, and he said he thought it was a terrific movie and he wished there'd been more time for upgrade on special effects.
He doesn't always give that stamp of approval, so that's that's top notch.
Well, that said, what we wound up with, remember the period that the children were watching their movie in the movie house and spilling shit on people and all that. some of the effects, like Pennywise going down the drain and stuff, have that Ray Harryhausen kind of 50s feel to it. So sometimes desperation gives way to something that is charming in its own fashion. And I thought that was why we got away with some of the stuff we did.
So did you not plan to stop motion that stuff initially?
Well, it was, I think that the possibility was open. We were working with Gene Warren, Fantasy 2, and everything was on the table as possibility, but it was also a matter of budget. What can you do with this? So at the beginning, it's not like I had this agenda. It's got to be this and it's got to be that. I was a good listener to find out what can we do realistically. What things. I learned something on The Fog that it taught me a hell of a lot. There's this scene where there's it's in a house. It might be Stevie Wayne's house, and some mysterious thing is going down. The fog is coming, and the tingle is in the air, and there's this, among other momentary effects, this chair shudders and moves a little bit. And the day of the shoot, we were there with Dick Albane was doing special effects. And we're scratching our heads going, okay, I think we need a pulley or something, and we need like double monofilament to fool around to do this. And no, we could do that with an air gun or blah, blah, blah. We're all doing this. And Dick, who's a rotund gentleman, kind of a hayseed for a Southern California boy, he kind of steps over and says, why don't I hide over there and I got this big stick and I'll just poke the stick in the back of the chair. He's like, good,
Brilliant.
let's
Brilliant.
do that.
Brilliant. How much is that going to cost?
Exactly. And that taught me a good lesson about it doesn't always have to be complicated or doesn't always have to be expensive.
Sometimes simplicity is elegant.
Sometimes, exactly. And I apropos of nothing, I am reminded of an adage, a movie business adage. Was sitting in a mixing theater, probably mixing, I don't know, maybe Halloween 3 or something. And Bill Varney, who went on to win several Academy Awards, was the mixer, head mixer. And I don't know how we got on the subject, but he wrote 3 words in a triangle: fast, good, and cheap. Triangle. And he said, every movie's the same thing. Pick 2 of these. You can't have all 3. And when you think about it, it's like, that's a pretty good adage. But I will say that I think we came close to breaking that rule on Halloween. We did it fast, we did it cheap, and it turned out to be good. That's almost never happens.
Well, I think that's the beauty of so many of the Carpenter stuff is that it was the simplicity. Again, it was like you cut it down to the meanest, just most efficient thing it could be.
Yeah, John is a deeply instinctive filmmaker, and he has loved movies since he was tiny and loved scary movies especially. So he knows the dynamics of how to do that, how to make magic out of almost nothing. But his adage has always been, keep it simple. Just keep it simple. That's the best way.
Yeah.
I'll open it up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. If anybody has any questions or comments, there's a microphone right here in the center. We'll start opening it up now. You can either do that or we can keep chatting and you can meander over there. Oh, he's going to jump the seats. He's going to do it.
You got this, man.
You got it.
You got this.
We won't tell.
Nobody look at him while he does this. Everybody turn away.
Hey, you know what? We can hear you fine. You don't have to go to the microphone.
So, first off, it sounds like you didn't already know, but there is a German Blu-ray release of Fright Night 2.
No, really?
Yeah, it's a 2K remaster. It's beautiful.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's the correct aspect ratio. It's gorgeous. I pay out my ass to get it over here and have a multi-release What is the roadblock in getting that on Blu-ray in the United States?
Listen, as is the fate of many movies, once somebody dies and they are the rights holders and that privilege passes on to their 17 children or something.
2 of which maybe caused some of that.
Well, it just gets ever more complicated. Throw in the fact that I don't know what the contract said, but the whole murder of Menendez was a huge complication. I've got a momentary story about that. Roddy McDowell and I went to see Mr. Menendez, had a little meeting with him at the Polo Lounge. It's a Beverly Hills landmark place where, people like to go and see and be seen and fancy themselves very important because, we just signed a deal with so-and-so, so we're going to the Polo Lounge to show off a little bit. There we were with Mr. Menendez. Little did we know that he only had days to live. And Roddy was pretty hard on him. He was pretty demanding. Roddy McDowell's a fantastic person, knows the business up and down, knows everybody, Hollywood royalty. So he was throwing his weight around a little, making sure the movie was going to get properly released. And of course, the meeting, Menendez said all the right things and we parted ways. And then the murders happened. And I got a phone call. And Roddy didn't like Menendez, and he made it clear that he didn't trust him. And it was kind of prickly toward the end. Anyway, Menendez gets shotgunned to death along with his wife. And this is a shock. And I get a phone call, pick it up, it's Roddy. And all he said was, well, I didn't do it, did you?
That's exactly what the person who did it would say.
Yeah.
So I would be immediately suspicious.
Yeah.
If you see me driving a van that said Roddy did it, you'll know we're referring to this instance. That's wild.
That's crazy. Wow. That's crazy.
So it's just a rights issue with an issue on top of an issue that you just
Exactly.
can't, like, how do you
it's
even
all
decipher?
tangled up.
Yeah.
Herb Jaffe, a dear man who was the mini studio called Vista Films, was responsible for gathering the money and getting it off the ground. And he had a nice little slate of films, including Fright Night Part 2, because he had been the producer on the original Fright Night. And unfortunately, he died not so long after that, and that at least was part of the reason it got complicated really fast.
Yeah.
It's one of those unfortunate things.
Yeah.
There are some fantastic scripts sitting on people's shelves out in Hollywood that aren't getting made for such reasons, such silly reasons as that. Legendary. There are several legendary titles that get passed around as examples of, be careful because this movie should be made, but it's not going to get made because X, Y, and Z.
A complicated place. I'll just go to Vancouver again. It sounded really nice up there.
Vancouver is nice. I've been there once.
Cappuccino
before.
truck.
Nice. Cappuccino trucks here.
I'll tell you, the coffee in Canada is very good.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah.
All right, let's open it up to another question.
Does anybody else have anything at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on down.
Coming on down.
Throw it out there. We'll hear you.
And he's got the Halloween 3 shirt on and everything.
Yes, sir.
What was your initial reason for not agreeing to work on Halloween 2? And also, what was your favorite scene to film from Halloween 3 season?
For those who couldn't hear out there, it was what was his reason of not working on Halloween 2? And what was the second part?
What was your favorite scene to shoot in Halloween 3?
From
Favorite
Halloween
scene
3.
in Halloween 3.
Let's see. I'll take the second question first. Favorite scene from Halloween 3. It was a fairly easy shoot for me. First time director, but I was by no means green. I'd paid my dues and I'd done just about every job on a movie set. And plus, I was working with a crew that were largely friends thanks to work on Halloween and The Fog. And I could tell they were rooting for me. So it was a fantastic, easy shoot, relatively speaking, when you're doing a movie on what was still a pretty low budget. But, I guess I could say maybe the scenes in the big electronics-laden factory scene at the end, the vast set that we had, and down at the one end is this big stone, and then all this electronic stuff. That was fun shooting. I got to do a modest oneer, which, for those who don't know, is just an entire scene in one shot, the way we did on the original Halloween at the beginning, going up through the house and stuff. But I enjoyed one particular shot when you begin with the guys just coming in. Tom is a prisoner, and they go down these steps, and the camera starts here, and it follows them and widens out to be what I'm hoping is a big wowzer kind of, oh, look, wow. Pan around, boom down. We were working with a nice Chapman crane, and Ray Stella, the operator, in this particular case, was imitating what John Alonzo did on Chinatown in a very famous shot, which is he's on the crane, but the camera is not wired down to the crane. The camera, it's a glide camera, what's the other name that people use? Steadicam.
Yeah.
And he's just standing on the platform as it's coming down through space, and when he gets to the bottom, he just steps off and goes and keeps on following the people around as they do this other stuff. That was fun. And a note to those who haven't gone through that before, be sure to have somebody else standing by so when he steps off the crane, somebody else gets on. Otherwise, the crane goes, wow, 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 wow.
Becomes a catapult.
Yeah, possibly killing somebody. So, Halloween 2. After Halloween 2 didn't come immediately after. We did The Fog, and then somewhere after that, talk began about a sequel to the original Halloween. And I've got to tell you, this was not sequel time. There were not all that many sequels going. Hollywood hadn't caught the disease. Sequelitis was yet to hit. And they say, hey, money's talking. Let's make Halloween 2. And honestly, our first reaction as a group was, what? We were naive. We loved making good movies. We weren't just, hacks, money-hungry hacks. And there was only one reason to make Halloween 2, and that was, let's make a bunch of money. So we got over that pretty quick. What? We made the perfect movie. Why would we want to make a sequel? We got over that because that train was going to leave the station whether we were on board or not. And I was pretty much the third guy on the team after John and Deborah. And I had done a lot of production design and other stuff. I wore a lot of hats, as well as being the editor, or finally, in the end, the co-editor with Charles Bornstein, because he was the assistant editor. He did such a good job, I just said, hey, man, let's share the credit. So it was fairly logical for them to turn to me and say, hey, I think, because John didn't want to direct it. To be honest, I think a lot of his feelings about Halloween 2 matched mine, but he was in a position different from mine where he was going to have to really make some money decisions, and it would be crazy to say no. So, but he didn't have to direct it, and he didn't want to direct it. So I was the guy, and that was fine with me. I thought it was a great opportunity. And we went along like that while John sequestered himself for a few days and wrote the script. Now, I had been thinking about a, like 5 years later kind of sequel. And my ideas, actually, although I'm not suggesting anybody stole them, I had the idea of, okay, Lori has been through a lot. 5 years later, she's at some college, and she was traumatized like a son of a bitch, but she's trying to recover. She's gone to a special college that has high walls, a lot of security. She's kind of a damaged person, but confident that she can get through college and make something of her life and get over this trauma that happened 5 years ago. And that would be basically kind of how the dynamics of H2O played out. Trap. Any security place can turn into a trap. So I was kind of thinking that way. But John and Deborah decided that a 5 minutes later sequel would be the thing to do.
Yeah, just trim that down a little bit. Yeah.
Well, 5 minutes later means more of the same. The killing continues. And I wasn't nuts about that idea, but it's like, okay, well, let's see how it goes. Let's see how the script reads. And when John turned in the script, and I don't think I'm telling any secrets that people don't already really know, and John has said so in interviews, he wrote it. He put Deborah on it, her name, kind of, I think, in a sense of teamwork, but maybe also to cover his ass so he didn't get all the blame. He turned in the script, and I read it, and I was so disappointed and dismayed because I am not crazy about guts and gore and hypodermic needles shoved into somebody's eyeball. I just think that's somebody else's cup of tea. It's not my cup of tea. So I was in a real dilemma because, hey, haven't directed a feature before. Here's your chance. Do you shut up and just do it and sell your soul right away before you even get started? Or do you speak up and say, I can't do this. I cannot do this in good conscience. You guys deserve some director who likes this and is enthusiastic about it and is going to give you 100%. That just isn't me. I can't do it. So I said, finally, I just said, I can't. I walked away. And that was a horrible feeling, because these are my friends. And typically in Hollywood, once you say no to any project, whoever that entity is not going to call you again, even if they're friends. In this case, those friends were different, and so when Halloween 3 came along, and actually Joe Dante was the original designated director, but he dropped out early, they decided to call me instead, and I'm so grateful they did.
Yeah. Wow. That Carpenter camp really was tight.
There were a certain few of us who stayed close, and that's part of what I think made it work, because everybody who's tried a low-budget movie knows how awfully hard it can be. A lot of things have to go right, and it only takes a few things to go wrong for the whole thing to go south.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah.
A lot of newer movies, the CGI takes me right out of the story sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you think practical effects will ever make a comeback?
The question for those who couldn't hear is, will practical effects make a comeback over CGI?
Yes, I think so. They already have. What smart directors know is that CGI is a fantastic tool, but if you get carried away with it and just say, oh, I see the giant spaceship comes in and the monster grabs it out of the sky and throws it across the universe, unless you lace that with tangible stuff, it very quickly in CGI it's just an animated movie, and it looks animated, it doesn't have weight, it's not quite believable, and your brain knows that. It tells you something. So the smart director and designer work out a system where there's just enough practical stuff going on that you can then tack CGI into it because it's a marvelous tool, no doubt about it. But smart guys and gals don't overuse it. And that wisdom will bubble up eventually. I don't think it's a thing of one or the other, but it's just another tool in the toolbox that's been misused for about 10 years now.
Well, one of my favorite ways I've heard it put was the Kyoto brothers once said that they said no matter how real the CGI will always be, it'll always be fake. And no matter how fake the practical effects are, they'll always be real.
Yeah, exactly. You're operating in space. It's a little bit like pure animation is very often marred by having to go too fast, and therefore the figures don't have any weight. Mm-hmm. That is the hardest thing to create, is a sense of weight and scale, especially when you're working with really large objects. It's hard to fake. Is somebody listening to something out there?
I think it's somebody.
I hear a little me.
Maybe in the lobby?
We can hear you. Okay, thank you.
Somebody go beat them up for us, please. Thank you. That guy's got us. Questions from the audience? Any more? Yeah.
Were there any other Myers masks considered, or the one that you came up with was the one you went with?
I went to Hollywood Novelty Store where I found the Captain Kirk mask. But as is always the case with me, as John's production designer, I basically tracked down most of the locations. And although John was very adaptable, I insisted on always giving him a second choice, just in case. And such was the case with the mask. I also bought, I think it was an Emmett Kelly clown mask, the sad sack clown, because I wanted us to be able, if the first one didn't work out, I wanted us to be able to instantly say, well, what about this one? By the time I finished working on the Captain Kirk mask, making it our own, I was pretty convinced that it would be the number one choice. But I brought along the clown mask too, and we auditioned it first, took it down to the production office, and the guy came out wearing the clown mask. I was like, yeah, that's scary, that's weird. This is gonna work, terrific. We got one in our pocket before we even auditioned the other one. And that was very reassuring and strange, pre-echoing my experience with it and Pennywise. But it became obvious that clowns can be pretty scary in that moment. But then when the second mask, the guy came out auditioning the second mask, it just, the room went quiet and I heard somebody like, oh my God. And I went, fuck me. That is the scariest thing I've ever seen. And that was before, we immediately knew we had a movie, because if you just set up the camera and shot that and had the guy walk toward camera, it was like, no! Before you have cool lighting, great script, scary music, we knew we had a horror movie.
To your knowledge, has Shatner ever reached out to Carpenter otherwise and be like, what the hell, man?
No, I don't think he ever reached out, but he has... He's well aware of it, and he has signed a few, autographed a few. I think he's been a good sport about it.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love that there was a say yes to the dress moment for the mask. That just makes me that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
Now spin around.
Yeah.
Ooh,
right.
yes.
Oh, yes.
Excellent.
Tears.
Excellent.
Everybody's crying. The mother of the bride.
Oh, man.
Any other questions from the audience out there? Yeah.
I absolutely adore Halloween 3.
Thank you.
It's one of my favorite films of all time.
Thank you.
And partly because it did open that door for a potential anthology
Yeah.
concept for the franchise.
Yeah.
If it was more successful commercially when it was released, were there any other stories that you all developed to
we hadn't gotten that far. We would have certainly, had it been a box office hit, we would have sat down right away and come up with 12 good pitches. Yeah. But after it, yeah, and by the way, it actually wasn't a box office failure by any means. It just didn't make as much as Halloween 2. It did pretty well, but because of the expectations so high, it was perceived by the people who mattered, the executives and the others, that it was a failure, and therefore, boom, no more conversation about that. And we hadn't, truthfully, we hadn't had time to think about other stuff. We were making Halloween 3, and that was a handful.
Anything else out there?
Right here.
Yeah, well, first, I think as time has progressed, most people acknowledge Halloween 3 was a great film. My question is, that was always the thought for Halloween 3 to be totally independent of Michael Myers?
Yeah, I think if it had been the second movie, there would have been no problem, because even a minimum of advertising could have said, hey, we're going to do something different now. But after H1, H2, Roman numeral 2, and then you come along with Halloween Roman numeral 3, it's natural for the audience to go, oh, another sequel, cool. Where the fuck's Michael Myers? It was a natural progression and just a bonehead mistake on our part. But had it been the second movie, I think we would have been in the clear.
Was there ever a discussion of just calling it Season of the Witch?
Not even for a second. I think people have asked me that before, and I've said, there wouldn't have been a movie if we couldn't call it Halloween 3. That's what got it made.
That makes sense, yeah. Well, I think we have time for like one more. Yeah, right here.
Cool. I'm late to the party here, so excuse me if this has been asked. Vampires Los Muertos.
Thank you.
I love that movie.
Thank you.
How did you come into the fold on that?
And what was it like working with John Bon Jovi as a follow-up?
Yeah.
Well, answer that question first. John was a prince. John Bon Jovi wanted very badly to have an acting career. Took it seriously, and he's a down-to-earth guy and a very astute businessman. Likeable as hell. I really enjoyed working with him. The movie has its weaknesses, and I feel as though there might be a couple of parts in there that were miscast. By that I mean I cast an actor here or an actor there who in the end just weren't up to the part, but I'm not going to say which ones. It was not John. I think he did a good job. Now, the other part of it, what was the other part of it? That came about because a sequel to Vampires, John's Vampires, was being talked about around town in general. But there was a subset of Sony Studios. What are they called? It's blanking. It was the producer, the executive of that mini studio, if you will, was somebody who really didn't have any business trying horror movies. But he had John Carpenter doing Ghosts of Mars. And so I think he thought maybe Sandy King pitched it to him or something and said, hey, why don't we make this deal? Well, this happens a lot in Hollywood, is you get one deal going and people are like, well, they sort of chase the ambulance. Maybe there's more money to be made over here. And one way or another, the deal for Vampires got made with the same mini studio that was doing Ghosts of Mars. And they needed a director, and John and Sandy recommended me. And I guess I convinced the head of that mini studio to take a chance, because I wrote the script, and he liked the script. and so he went with me. Yeah, that was a difficult movie. It was fun shooting it. We were down in Mexico kind of on our own, not a lot of studio interference, but man, they made up for it in post. Studio interference was insane. I think everybody here can agree that the Carpenter school of horror filmmaking has a thread of humor that helps make it scary. Now, anybody can understand that if you think about it. Comic relief sets you up for the next scare. So you have a kind of a musical movement where you're rising and falling. It's not all just one scary thing. You get more bang for your buck out of these scares if you're brought occasionally down to earth with some sort of humor, or even the scary part itself can be oddly humorous in some way, like Bob with the glasses and the ghost and all that. That's funny. This guy, the head of this mini studio, just did not understand that. He didn't understand it, so I knew we were in trouble. It was going to be a difficult shoot. But I'll tell you what, I'm really glad that you like it. It tells me that it was, in fact, in the end, a complete movie that clicks. And I so much appreciate that that it has fans.
One of the most memorable ways that anyone ever gets turned into a vampire ever, and I'll just leave it at that with the actor that played Eddie Winslow in Family Matters. The way that he got turned into a vampire.
Clarify for me, which one is that?
The African-American lead, and I can't remember his character.
Oh, yeah. Memphis was the name of the character. Yeah, he was seduced, wasn't he, out in the campground kind of thing? Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, well, fun for everybody but him.
Well, Tommy Lee, thank you again so much for coming and chatting with us today. Give it a round of applause.
And thank you all for coming out and attending. Make sure you head over to Tommy's booth and check out. He's got all kinds of beautiful photos and doing signings.
You have the book that you've at the table, right? That you've referred to. You have. Some
I
copies of
have
the book?
one book only, so you can come look at it. You can take pictures of the publisher's address, and it's also available on. My mind is a blank. What's the most obvious? Amazon.
We got you. DJ Michaela is going to be here at 2, so stick around for that. And thank you again, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Jordan.
you guys.
Thank you.
By the way, many compliments to people who come to these shows and give us this kind of support. We couldn't do this stuff without you guys, so thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
Hi, listeners. I'm Carolina.
And I'm Tessa. And together we are Femme Regard Podcast.
Femme.
We are a show dedicated to educating and entertaining underdeveloped filmmakers and film enthusiasts alike.
We love sharing our experiences as filmmakers, what we've learned and what we've gone through.
And we love bringing on professional industry guests.
We want our listeners to learn from the best and get an honest account of the biz.
So come join the Femme Fam and give us a listen every Friday.
Streaming on all the major podcast platforms, including YouTube and our website, femregard.com, and of course, the Geekscape Network.
Hi, friends. The world got you down. Don't be sad. Listen to $2 Late Fee with Zach and Dustin.
$2 Late Fee is the podcast that celebrates the best decade of entertainment, the 1980s. We pick a movie and soundtrack from our youth that we loved and see if it holds up today. We also interview your favorite celebrities from that era.
All in the spirit of positivity and togetherness. Check us out at $2latefee.com.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.